And so I think because there's so many nonprofits in Africa, like no one benefits from telling the truth that it's actually progressing and that it's very modern, that there's so much potential. They get money when they talk about like all the bad stuff.
Hello, beautiful people. It's Michele Phillips, and we are here with Valerie Bowden on another episode of Write Your Outcome. I am super excited for this podcast because Valerie does something that's so unfamiliar to me, but just so near and dear to my heart. So let me read a little bit about her, and then I will introduce her. Valerie helps businesses find top-tier remote talent to optimize their sales operations by tapping into the wonderful people across African countries. I love what she says in her bio. She says, this area of the world is underrepresented and vastly underestimated in its talent, pricing, and reliability. It all started when she backpacked across Africa by herself. Then she lived in Ethiopia for 8 years and she stumbled on outsourcing. And there's no stumbling, right? Everything is in divine order. And she thought, wow, if we could do this right, this would be fabulous. So her company, CRDLE, matches companies with the type of talent they need. She hires them, onboards them, trains them, all at a fraction of the cost. And they have exponentially high standards and skill sets. So Valerie, welcome to Write Your Outcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you. So let's start from the beginning. You went on this backpacking trip. Why?
Well, the very beginning story is that I had volunteered actually in Ethiopia for 3 months, right after college. And I immediately loved Ethiopia. It was so different than I thought. You know, I had those like stereotypes as like a Midwest girl that it was like all poverty, needs charity. And instead I find this like vibrant culture with like the best coffee, the best food. And then unfortunately the nonprofit I was volunteering with was operating illegally. And that was my first glimpse that a lot of, not all of them, but some of the nonprofits that we hear so much about, they're actually not doing what they're supposed to be doing on the ground. And so I came back home in love with Ethiopia and then kind of done with the nonprofit world. I went to grad school for social work, couldn't get Ethiopia out of my head. And I decided I have to go back and I want to see the rest of the continent. And then because I was so broke after grad school, I could only afford to backpack. And so I had my backpack a tent and I started in Cape Town and then I spent 7 months and 9 days traveling through 13 countries until I got to the other end of the continent and ended up in Egypt.
Oh my goodness. What a story. And I love what you said too about we have such stereotypes. Mm-hmm. We only know, I don't know, we think we know, we don't know until you actually go to a country. So I love that you said when you got there, it was this beautiful, vibrant culture. Can you share a little bit about what you found when you got there?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think when people hear, specifically Ethiopia, they think of like the famine, which happened before I was even born, right? So a lot has changed since then. And instead in Ethiopia, it's the country that invented coffee. So if you like coffee, it's the best country to visit. Amazing food, like the kindest people, so many cool places to visit when you're there. Like they have so many fun things to do. And yeah, I had a blast. And in fact, my entire trip in Africa was just amazing. Like it was like one adventure after another. And because we've only heard the bad things about the continent, when you're actually there traveling, you get to discover all the good things. And it's, it's just the whole continent is very different, very diverse and incredible.
I just love being pleasantly surprised, and travel is such a gift because I always say there's good people everywhere and we are pleasantly surprised. So now you go back to school for social work. And then, I mean, still I love that it was pulling. I always have a saying, follow the energy, right? If something's pulling you that, much, can you, go? So tell us about your second trip and then how the whole outsourcing thing came to be.
Yeah. So I agree with you. It felt kind of like a magnet where I just couldn't get out of my head. And I think that's the idea that sometimes you have to take a leap of faith without really knowing how to do it and just knowing that you can figure it out, like having that belief in yourself. So after I did my 7-month backpacking trip, I loved Ethiopia the most and I'd already been there. So I told my parents, I'm just going to stay in Ethiopia for 6 months. And then I promised like, I'm going to come home. And then instead, I stayed 8 years. I came home with like a husband and a baby. So things had, definitely gone a different way in a very positive way. So when I was in Ethiopia, I started working for one of the top American outsourcing companies. And that was the first time that I realized that, large corporations in America were outsourcing to Africa. You always think of India or the Philippines. Yeah, but you don't think like, oh, my next best cold caller is probably in Ethiopia. But we were working with these large companies, and the companies were so happy with the quality, the talent, the accents. And so at first I loved it because we were like creating jobs for the youth, until I realized that so many of the Ethiopians were only getting paid 50 cents an hour. And because of that, they were quitting, which hurt the retention rates. And, they had just so much untapped potential that these large, like Fortune 100 companies really weren't taking advantage of. And I didn't realize then that so many of the companies in America, they're outsourcing to another company who outsources to another company. So it's not direct. So even these large names, you think, wow, how could they pay 50 cents an hour? And I don't know if they even know that that's what the people are getting paid, because there's so many middlemen in the middle. And it really hurts, their customers in the end, because that's bad delivery, right? And so when I moved back to the US 3 years ago, I thought like, we can do better. And so that's when I got the idea to do outsourcing. And we are very meaningful about partnering corporations directly to the talent, staying involved, but making sure that there's no middlemen so people get paid fairly.
Wow, that's, again, I didn't know all this, right? I hope everyone listening is getting an education, because we don't know how things are done. So tell us the journey when you started this company. Did you just start? I mean, you already have your foot in the social work world and the outsourcing world, so you had experience there. But what were the highs and maybe some of the detours you didn't expect when you started the company?
So it's been going for 3 years now, and it's honestly been amazing. We have about 120 team members now with us throughout the continent. I think the best part is just seeing how happily surprised most American clients are. And what I love about like business leaders is that they're so innovative. And so when they hear about like a new, like emerging outsourcing destination, they're willing to take advantage of it and test it out. And so we've been received very, very well in companies. It's been a really good thing. And because we pay so much better and we provide more career incentives and career training, we just have like an endless pool of talent who wants to work for us. And when they get hired, they do such a great job.
Okay, I can't wait till the end. Tell everybody the name of your company and the website right now in case people want to look it up while they're listening.
That's so nice. It's called CRDLE because Africa is the cradle of humanity. And we spell it CRDLE. So cradle.com.
Okay, wonderful. So do you have like people on the ground in Africa? How do you get your folks in Africa?
Yeah. So now we have an entire recruitment team that it's like a 10-step recruitment process to make sure that we get really good candidates. And then our clients also, like for anyone out there who's like interested in outsourcing, we always say like you should be able to interview the candidates that you're hiring.
Yeah.
And so whoever you choose, I would say sign up for that interview and get to meet people. And so that's kind of how we introduce clients to our team members.
That's wonderful. And is it just for corporations or is it for entrepreneurs as well? Like maybe small to mid-sized businesses?
Yeah, we have small to medium-sized businesses as well. It's really anyone who could use like an affordable team member and knows how to kind of like plug them into a good process and a good system so that they can be effective.
Fabulous. And so I have so many questions bubbling in my head. So do they have to, so is it like a set amount of, I have like a virtual assistant and I use her on project basis. So, but it's not like a full-time. Do you do projects or is it just 9 to 5 kind of?
Yeah, we do. I think most of the team members who apply to us, they really want it to be like their career. So they're not interested in the projects. So we do part-time and full-time. So 20 hours and up is what most of our team members do. Okay,
fabulous. And is there any particular industry that you favor or, what kind of clients are you looking for?
No, so we work with any kind of industry. I think what is the unifying factor is that we plug into those entry-level positions. So we're the first touch point, like that friendly appointment setter who has perfect American accent, or that customer service rep who can really represent your company well. So it's just like that initial level, that tier one. And then if it's a cold caller and they close the sale or they close the appointment, it's the internal sales team who takes over. Or if it's customer service and it gets too complicated, that's when it gets.
Okay. And that first touch point is so important. I tell this story. A couple of years ago, I just moved out to a new place and I heard about this restaurant and someone said to me, oh, there's this restaurant that, after dinner, they move the tables and they play, I think they said Jamaican music. I don't remember what it was. And I was like, oh, I got to go to this restaurant. So I call up to make a reservation. The man on the phone was so much fun. I could not wait to go to this restaurant. I hung up and I said to my husband, I have not had that much fun making a dinner reservation in forever, but that touch point stuck with me. He was just so powerful, so vibrant, so excited to just be making me a dinner reservation.
That's such a good example. It is. It makes such a big difference. And you want that really fun, friendly, professional voice on the other end. And that's a fantastic example of why that position matters so much.
Yeah. And then you want to tell people, I told everybody about this restaurant.
And then you were like going in so excited with already like a positive impression. Yeah, I think that's amazing. And so if you think of like companies, like if you're not properly training or if you're not properly hiring for that position, like you are making like a negative impression with your customers, which is what nobody wants.
You had something really good on your website also that I liked. It was about the onboarding, which is so important. I interview a lot of people in a lot of corporations, and even I remember I had an HR director years ago, and I used to do onboarding training. I used to do the new hire training for Verizon Wireless in my first career. Oh. And the HR woman would say, "Oh my God, Michele, people come out of your class, they're on the ceiling, they're so excited to start." And then they get to their job and they're like, "Oh," right? Because they get no real help, no support, no onboarding. So tell us about your onboarding and what makes it different.
That's a great question. It does make a big difference. So we do an onboarding with the client and our account manager joins. So that way we make sure, again, like you said, we want to hype them up, we want to get them set up, the tech back end, all of that. And then our account manager will meet with the client every week. So they meet with the person that you hire as well as the client every week to make sure that it's like you said, it's still smooth once things get going. And there's always like troubleshooting in any job. So having that other person who's kind of representing both sides is really, really helpful to make sure it sticks.
Okay, fabulous. So again, my background is happiness and happiness research. And in the happiness positive psychology research, there's 3 levels of happiness that they speak of. And the bottom level of happiness is just pleasure, getting your nails done, having a drink with a friend, going for a walk, pleasurable things you could feel good about, in the moment. Then the next level of happiness is when you're in flow, when time flies and you don't realize it. The highest level of happiness is when people use their unique skills and talents in service of something bigger than themselves. And I get chills saying that because I intuit that's what you're doing, but I don't know you that well. So tell us about how your unique skills and talents it's like when your deep gladness meets the world's deep need.
I have not heard it put like that before, but I love that. And it's how I feel, because growing up, I never thought, like all my backgrounds would come together, like to go from social work into business, into randomly taking an outsourcing position, into traveling the continent. All of that has like led me to be very, passionate about creating jobs on the continent and also helping Americans rethink the continent, since I've had to personally learn how to rethink it, and hopefully influence that we do better business with the continent. So it does feel like every day waking up and getting to speak truth and help business leaders and help professionals in Africa get connected and make something meaningful happen. So it's definitely a joy being able to do what I do.
And I love what you said about never thinking that all of your talents can converge. So anybody listening, I just really want you to take note of that. The things that you do the easiest, the things that people go, "Oh my God, that was so good." And you're like, it was nothing. Those are your superpowers. And, when you're using them in service, like everybody has them. It's not just, it's not just Valerie. It's not just me. It's everybody listening. So, kind of just staying open to where you can use those superpowers and write your outcome. So, this is called Write Your Outcome. So what's on the horizon for you? What outcomes are you writing for Cradle and yourself?
Yeah. I think our team has a desire to create 1,000 jobs. So over the next 5 years, I know we're busy internally getting lots more companies signed up. And so that's something that we're most excited about. I'm going to go back to Ethiopia actually this summer to visit. And I haven't been there since I left. So I'm really excited. And I know that we're going to be doing a lot of photos and filming. So we're really excited just to put that out into the world and hopefully show up and make a difference in what we're putting out there in the media.
This is fascinating. I mean, I'm just getting a vision of Oprah in the village, with her girls' school, right? It's really just, it's connecting people with, the need. And one of the books I read years ago was Banker to the Poor by Muhammad Yunus. Yeah. So he won the Nobel Peace Prize, right, for microloans. And similar to what he found that these women making baskets in India, they were paying loan sharks, and the loan sharks, they were making nothing on their work. So they only needed such a fraction of money. So these women tried to go to the banks to get, let me back up so people listening can know the story. He was an economic teacher, at the University of Mumbai. I'm not sure, one big, university in India. And he would say, I'm here teaching economics in school. And then I walk on the street and it's squalor and these poor women. And he started talking to them. What do you need? Oh, I need this much money. I need that much rupees, whatever it is. And so he got these women together and he brought them to the bank and said, can we get a loan? And the bank would not give them the money because they have no collateral, they have no credit, etc. So he tried so many times. He finally took out loans himself. He said the money was so minuscule. It's just, to us, maybe $500, $200. They didn't need big amounts of money. And when he loaned the money to women and they made a good living, they put it back into their family. They put it back into their education. And, this is what he won the Nobel Peace Prize for. I forget what year it was, but, I feel like you're changing lives on both sides of the continents, by just matching people and showing them what's possible. Do you have any success stories or, I'm putting you on the spot, but something you'd like to share?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, I love the story that you shared because it's like what would have been a limitation. He saw that as an opportunity. And I think that's a good lesson. I think for us, I think my favorite thing is that so many of the people we hire are women. So 70% of our team members are women. And so you get these, we get sisters, we get wives, we get cousins, we get a lot of family members all working together. And when women, like you mentioned, start to make money, we hear these stories I finally took my mom out shopping, or I can pay for my little sister's school now. Or there's a lot of women who are going to grad school with the money that they're earning from Cradle. And then at night they plug in and do their US job. And it's just so cool to think there's more women who have more education and a better place to live, and their kids are better off because they have a great job. And if you think there's so many companies in America who have open positions and who are hurting with economics and could use a more affordable team member, or their American team is just stretched so thin that the retention rate is hard on the American side. And if you could give them some support people, it really is just a win-win on both sides that I hope more people are aware of.
Again, it's realizing, I always say, I quote Wayne Dyer, you can't take up sides on a round planet. So, and so the ripple effect, right? What happens on the other side of the world affects us, and, bringing these two cultures together. Why is Africa so underrepresented and underestimated, like you say?
That's a great question. It's probably a dark answer, but I think a lot of nonprofits and charities, again, not all of them, but they benefit when we think the worst of the continent. So a story that when I was backpacking, I visited this nonprofit that I had heard great things about. My family had supported it. I get on the ground and it's nothing like we were told, right? And I met the people running it, and they were living the life. They were fluent in that culture. They were talking about how the hardest part when they come home to America is they have to buy clothes from Salvation Army so that they look poor and they look the part of a nonprofit worker. And all this to say is they don't say the truth that they live near a beach and that the people are nice and they eat organic fresh fruit and they're very safe and very happy. They would just say the worst of the culture because that's how they got money to support, themselves and their nonprofit. And so I think because there's so many nonprofits in Africa, no one benefits from telling the truth that it's actually progressing and that it's very modern, that there's so much potential. They get money when they talk about all the bad stuff. And so because of that, and because people don't travel as much, so we just have this idea and we've seen these things on the media, but not enough people have actually traveled there and been there to know the truth. But everybody I know who's been to the continent loves it and always goes back. Yeah. If you look at how fast the countries are developing, and I think actually 54% of the countries, the majority of the continent ranks more peaceful than the United States, according to the Global Peace Index. Yeah. So it's statistically safer than the US. It's developing fast. And yet most people just aren't aware of it.
Yeah. So you're doing such a service by raising awareness and having these conversations. How do you get the word out about your business? Is it all, word of mouth? Is it advertising?
Yeah, thanks to people like you who allow us to come on their podcast. That's like a massive support. And a lot of I live on LinkedIn. So we do a lot of things like that and we get tons of referrals. And at the end of the day, I always tell people it's not really about Cradle. Like we don't care if you go with us, if you go with another outsourcing company, we just want people to rethink the continent and be open to hiring from there.
Okay, perfect. And so tell me so on LinkedIn, are you doing LinkedIn lives? Or are you just posting about what, the stories?
Yeah, I post almost every day on LinkedIn. I don't know.
It's LinkedIn with her today, so stay tuned.
I love LinkedIn. It has helped grow our business. I think 10% of our clients come from LinkedIn.
That's a huge statement.
Yes, I used to hate LinkedIn, and then I read a book that changed my whole philosophy on how I use LinkedIn. It made me appreciate it, and now it's how I stay in touch with our clients. It's how we grow. It's how we find new clients. So if anyone's out there,
you have to share the book now because
it's by Daniel Disney, and it's called The Ultimate LinkedIn Sales Guide.
I'm gonna put it down.
But yeah, for anyone out there who's like, I don't like LinkedIn or I'm not posting daily or I'm not getting results, that book really shifted my perspective of the platform.
Yeah. And, I like what you're saying too, because everything we're talking about today is about perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So people have a perspective of Africa. People have a perspective of LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So we always have choice. And I did not use LinkedIn for a long time because I'm all about having fun and it wasn't as fun for me. It was too serious. But I've recently been posting on LinkedIn more and I am having fun and, work can be fun. So I'm about I want to use my talents and services and I want to have fun, and my level of happiness. So, rethinking everything, rethinking sourcing, rethinking LinkedIn. It's all about the perspective. And I love that's what you're bringing to the world.
That's so fun. Do you find since you're working with corporations, are American employees just getting burnt out with the level of workload that they have today? Is that causing a happiness issue?
That's a very good question. I think it's not only a lot of it comes from the expectations we put on ourselves. We are a very achievement driven culture. Mm-hmm. And so to achieve and, plus with all the, downsizing, sunsetting, restructuring, whatever term you use, every single person I know in my career has been shuffled at some, kind of the dice roll and they landed someplace they didn't expect. So I think that coupled with our, social media, it's who's doing what and what have you done lately? And so some of it is real, but I think a lot of it is manufactured. I see with my clients, we do a lot of actions that maybe we don't need to do. And when I talk to the leaders, that's what's so fun. Now you're interviewing me, but I love it. When you talk to the leaders, what they're saying to me is they make their own schedule. They're making themselves crazy. So they could use outsourcing. So I only recently started outsourcing my work a couple of years ago. I've been a one-woman show for 25 years and it has helped me so much. And I shouldn't say that. Years ago, I had someone that did a lot for me. And then when she left, I didn't replace her and blah, blah, blah. It's, the ability for you to do what you love. And years ago, I read a book that I loved. It was, and the book was old, but I remember the analogy was when the Rolling Stones go to do a concert, they're not the ones driving the trucks. They're not the ones setting up the stage. They only go out and do what they do best. So when you're in your career, if you're spending 80% of your time on what you do best and you're able to outsource the rest, that's the recipe you want. So I think that falls really well into your model. Again, when I went to your website, I was just so touched by the whole thing. I just felt heart in it. I felt that you were really honest about what you were doing. And I like the fact that you're I didn't know what you said about the middlemen.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't know. And I think, again, to give grace to those companies who are paying 50 cents an hour, I think they don't know that. So that's the power of having a good outsourcing partner and asking the right questions. But yeah, it's unfortunate because then the quality is impacted when there are so many middlemen and people aren't getting paid right.
Is there requirements for your folks? Do they need to have a degree or how do you figure out what their skills are?
Yeah. So everyone has a college degree or they're towards the end of their college career. And then we are second. We always say we're the second stop. So we do let companies work for those Fortune 500 companies because it gets them great training. But then because those companies pay so bad, they're very happy to come over to us once they know okay, I love sales. I just did 6 months of cold calling for this like large company. And then when they plug into especially like a smaller or medium business that knows their name, they're not just like a seat number or like an employee number. Like they have a real name. They join the stand-ups, they join the meetings. And they've been trained by like that Fortune 500 company. Like they show up and they do such a great job. And that's kind of the advantage that I think smaller and medium-sized businesses have is that in this day and age, you now can access offshore talent. Like back in the day, it was only large companies who would do that. But now after COVID, like with the technology, a small business can hire someone in a really affordable country, pay a great salary, and have a great team member who's really motivated to do a good
You
job.
hit on two things that are so important. So coming from a corporate, I worked in corporate for, I don't know, 15 years, maybe probably more. But then I started doing this, but I still work in corporate, but I'm an entrepreneur for now. But that corporate background afforded me so much education that when I work with smaller businesses and I think, oh my God, this is like an HR nightmare, some of the things they do because they don't have that background or, those lessons. So that's really important what you're saying. I love that you're their second stop. And the other thing you said that I'd like to touch on is the sales piece. Do you give them sales training? Does a company give them sales training? And are they cold calling? Are they warm calling? I'd love to hear the sales side of it.
That's, I'm so happy that like corporations do train so well. So most of the team members we have, if it's like sales, they get the training from the Fortune 500 company. And then we have additional layer of training that we also add. And then usually the company that hires them through us also provides like one additional layer of training specifically on their company and their, the way they do things.
Okay. On their products as well, I would think.
Yeah. Their products, their services. And that's like another tip that, seems so common sense, but like the companies that train the most get the best support. So if we have a client who is like, here's your list, start dialing tomorrow.
Yeah.
That cold caller never does as well as a company that's like, this is your first week of training and these are the presentations and you meet these team members and you're going to shadow on these calls. Those people do so much better. And then in terms of like the calls we do like the super cold calls. And we also just set like, maybe you're getting 1 or 2 appointments a day. And then we have some clients who have warm lists and our people are booking like 10 to 12 calls a day. So it really just depends on the list and on the results you get. But most of our team members feel comfortable doing either.
Oh, that's fabulous. And I remember, I started at Verizon. I won't even say when, but cell phones were brand new and it wasn't even called Verizon back then. But anyway, one day they came to us. At first, we were just selling service. You had to go to like a Radio Shack, like a electronics store to buy a phone back in the day. And then one day they came to me and they said, "We're going to start selling phones." And I said, "Oh, great. When?" I was a telemarketing rep. They go, "Today." And they handed me a brochure. And I remember being on the phone going, "It's got DTMF pad dialing. You pay for income." I didn't know what I was talking about. Wow. I mean, they eventually trained us. I got very good training, but it was so funny. But it was such a new technology. We were selling them. I don't know how, but
that's so funny. And I think that's why like to your point, like if you don't have good training, the results aren't good. And unfortunately, so many outsourcing teams don't get good training. And then people have that, again, like a negative stereotype about outsourcing in general, whether it's from the Philippines or India or Africa. They'll think like they're not good or they sound like robots. And it's like, no, they probably weren't trained or they get in trouble if they go one word off script. And so that's why they sound like a robot because the client is making them sound like a robot.
Oh gosh, you hit on such a good thing. So the whole script thing. So here's the thing. It's, we just want people to help us. So a lot of times I find, and I'd love you to talk to this. A lot of times you call up an 800 number and you get someone that's reading a script and the script, you can almost feel like the script says, if they say this, go here. If they say that, go there. And you're just so frustrated because they're not even listening to what, what you need. So what is and then you wonder, why are they paying these people so much money? I don't know what they're paying. They're paying someone to answer the phone that can't help me, has no power and is not thinking for themselves. So I'd love you to talk to that.
So frustrating. It's not the outsourced team member's fault. It's literally the client's fault for setting it up like that. So what you should do is you have a general script for, general flow,
Yeah.
and you train them on objections. And there are a few compliance issues they might have to say, like this is on a recorded line. But other than that, if you train your people well, they should be able to like listen and have a good conversation and know that they can get a little off script and sound like a real human. And some of it's like the quota. So some clients will say like, you have to do 500 calls or like you'll lose your job. But wouldn't you rather have like 475 calls,
Yeah.
but you gave an extra minute to each like person who picked up the phone and you had a better conversation. And so it's the SDR manager, like the sales development representative manager in the client, like in the company, that makes such a big difference in setting this up. Because at the end of the day, offshore team members, they're great tools. So you plug them in and they do well if you put them into the right system, process, scripts. But like you're saying, if you give them a script and they can't get off of it, you make them do a certain volume or they get in trouble. And then you don't give them good training, like they're not going to perform well. So you have to set it up smart and then it works wonderfully.
Yeah, this is so amazing because I love companies like you that change the equation. Because unfortunately, there's so many that are giving the quota and it just is ridiculous. So I love when a new competitor comes in that's just true and real, and that's what you are. So anybody listening, please, are there any final words of wisdom you want to share? I want people to know about you or your company, and then also tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I would say if you're listening to this, overall themes are don't be afraid to hire from Africa, whether it's through us or someone else. And don't be afraid to travel the continent. Maybe you're not ready to hire, maybe you can't in your industry, but take a trip to the continent and just have like the best vacation of your life. And if anybody is interested in finding me, like I said, it's cradle.com, CRDLE.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Valerie Bowden on LinkedIn. And I live there and I give just free tips on how to hire offshore team members that might be helpful for you.
I love it. And before the call, she said she was going to give me an itinerary if I want to go to Africa. So I think I'm saying it out loud so you all hear me. I'm going to take her up on that. Thank you so much, Valerie. It has been a pleasure. This just shows that you can rate any outcome you want. What is the outcome you want in your life? What is the outcome you want for your day, for your month, for your year, for your career? Just take a moment, take a page out of Valerie's book. Please connect with her on LinkedIn and her other platforms and make it a great day.